February 11th is fittingly 211 Day, 211 Day if you wish. What exactly is it? Why is that number important? Tammy Dumas is here to discuss the significance. Tammy, for those who don't know, what exactly is 211?
211 for those who don't know, and that's why we're trying to get the word out. But 211 for those who don't know really it's a front door to services for people. It's a number that people can call simply by dialing 211. And by dialing 211, they can get connected to the community, social, or government services that they need. So it's a provincial helpline that's available across Ontario and across Canada. What people may not know is it's available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And for people who connect to the service, it can be provided to them in over 150 languages.
You work for an organization called INCommunities, and you have basically the contract, I guess I would say, for the South Central region of Ontario. What area does that cover exactly?
We provide the service for Central South Ontario. So what that means is the calls in that community will come to our team first. Well, we are part of a larger integrated system in Ontario, but Central South Ontario refers to Niagara, Halton, Waterloo, Wellington, Brant, Guelph, those communities.
And are you answering calls? Is your organization answering calls in St. Catharines? Is that where you're based?
Yeah, so INCommunities, the office that delivers the 211 program for Central South, we're located in St. Catharines, so our office is in St. Catharines. Our team is in St. Catharines. Of course, we're still working remotely.
Your wonderful sweater today says 211 Ontario,
yes.
But you mentioned Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So this operation or similar operations take place across the country as well?
As a result of COVID-19 in 2020 allowed for the expansion of 211 in areas where it didn't exist at the time. So the nice thing now is we can say that 211 is available, and there are 211 providers in every province in Canada.
In Central South Ontario, have you seen an increase in calls to 211 during this pandemic?
Yeah, great question. We absolutely have. So we saw, especially in line with the emergence of the pandemic, right at that beginning, we saw a marked increase in those calls that were coming in. As you can imagine, at that time, everybody, it felt like people were in crisis. They didn't know what was happening. So we saw an immediate increase in those calls. Locally, we can say that our calls in our community pre-COVID to 2021, on average, probably increased about 30%, 30 to 40%. And that could have been different in different areas, at different centers across the province. What we're seeing now is sort of a slow return to those pre-COVID numbers of calls. What we have noted, though, are the calls that are coming in. Certainly the pandemic changed what people were looking for information about and what services they were seeking.
That was my next question. So what is the difference pre-pandemic? What kind of information were people looking for? And was it more of a crisis response that you're seeing during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And as a reminder, 211 is not a crisis service, but our navigators are trained to connect people to crisis services if they need them, absolutely. But we can say one of the things that were noted in 2020 and the kind of calls that we received, what we categorize as government information calls. And that was likely due to people just really not knowing what was available to them with the benefits that were being provided through different levels of government. Again, early on in the pandemic, a lot of calls related to people were seeking information around, what does this mean for me? Am I eligible to receive these services? Those kinds of things. What we noted in 2020 was because we do track, we track our data in terms of what we call our contact reports and the needs that we have that people are calling about. And in 2021, our number one need in Niagara was for housing. So we were receiving calls for people who were unhoused, people who were they were housed but were looking for additional accommodations. That can also include calls related to tenant-landlord issues or disputes. But also during the pandemic, some of those calls were related to students who were still paying rent but had moved, were schooling remotely. And so, how does this work for me? So those kinds of things.
Do you have a story, a call that stands out in your mind?
I do. I have lots. But I can think of some of the most recent ones that we've discussed where really highlights how 211 made a difference being available to people. The one that comes to mind was locally, it was an older woman who had called, and she was living with her husband who had early onset dementia. And sadly, during the lockdown, their TV was broken. And so she had said for about a year, they had been sitting doing absolutely nothing. And she was quite lonely and quite upset. And so luckily with that phone call, we were able to connect her to the Alzheimer's Society, to Seniors Outreach program, as well as to a warm line for seniors. So she, in the call, was quite thrilled that she had some connection to support, in addition to getting help with getting her television fixed.
What kind of stories are you hearing from young people? What kind of requests for information are coming from teens, for instance?
Yeah. Well, I can't think of a teen one, but one I can think of, another story, is a call from an international student. So a call from an international student, they had to leave where they were living. They didn't have a lot of time, and they were quite distraught that they were going to be homeless, and they had no family here with them to support them through this. So through that call, we were able to provide them with connections to housing help and settlement services. What we're doing as well is we're building more follow-up into the service that we offer so that we can make sure that people receive the help that they need. And if not, how can we continue to help them? But upon follow-up, we learned that they had found temporary accommodation, and settlement services were continuing to help them look for more permanent housing. Really, we want to raise awareness. It's such a valuable asset to our community, in particular people who may be lonely or isolated or vulnerable. If you're looking for information, it's simple to dial 211 and have a warm, friendly voice on the other end of that phone to help you connect to the services that you're looking for. So that's really the elevator pitch, is we can be that front door for you. In terms of what people might not know is, to support the work that we do through our trained navigators on the helpline, we have a huge comprehensive database that we build provincially. So it's an up-to-date reflection of services in the communities across Ontario, and certainly Canada and other provinces. That's what our navigators rely on.
And again, I want to stress the astounding number of languages, 150 different languages that you deal with. And again,
Absolutely.
It couldn't be simpler. I know there's a website, but couldn't be simpler. 211, pick up your phone and dial it.
Absolutely.
Tammy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.